The duffel strap cut into my shoulder, but the thing that stopped me cold wasn't the weight of 300 days at sea. It was the for sale sign hammered into Laila Martin's front yard. Elm Street looked exactly the way memory had punished me with for 10 months. White porches, trimmed lawns, sprinklers ticking over hot sidewalks. The smell of cut grass and sun-warmed asphalt instead of salt, diesel, and open water. I had imagined this street from the deck of a cargo hauler in the middle of the Pacific, more times than I wanted to admit. I had pictured the oak trees, the neat mailboxes, the porch railings, the small blue house 3 doors down from mine. Laila's house. The house with the wraparound porch, the old limestone retaining wall, and the rusted brass wind chimes that never sounded pretty, but somehow always sounded like home. But I had never imagined the for sale sign. Barnaby saw me first. The golden retriever stopped mid-step, then barked so hard his whole body shook. His leash snapped tight. Laila turned, one hand still holding the leather loop, the other gripping a folded piece of paper I could not read from the sidewalk. For a second, neither of us moved. She looked different, not older, tighter, like someone had been holding herself together with rules, deadlines, and pride, because nobody else was allowed close enough to notice the cracks. She wore a faded floral dress with a light cardigan over it, her blonde hair pulled back in a careless knot. A few loose strands moving in the breeze. The tiny scar above her left eyebrow, the one from a 4th-grade bicycle crash she hated when anyone mentioned it, pinched slightly as she looked at me. Barnaby dragged her forward. I dropped my duffel. It hit the pavement with a heavy canvas thud. Barnaby shoved his head under my hand, like I had only been gone an afternoon instead of nearly a year. I scratched behind his ears with the heavy pressure he liked. "Hey, old man," I said. Barnaby sneezed on my boot. Laila's voice came quietly above him. "You're back." I looked up. "Contract ended. That's all?" The words were simple. The hurt behind them was not. I swallowed. Dropped anchor in Baltimore Tuesday. Took the early train down. Her eyes moved to my duffel, then to my house, then back to my face. No hug, no smile, no easy welcome home. I had not earned one. The wind moved through the neighborhood, and the rusted brass chimes on her porch gave one hollow, uneven note. I looked at the for sale sign again. "You're selling?" Her fingers tightened around Barnaby's leash. "I'm trying to survive." Before I could ask what that meant, a silver sedan rolled slowly down Elm Street and stopped beside her curb. The passenger window lowered. Graham Vale leaned across the console with the kind of smile men used when they wanted cruelty to look administrative. He was the president of the HOA, famous for measuring grass and calling it community service. "Laila," he called. "Just a reminder. The committee meets next week. If the retaining wall isn't moved back 4 feet by then, the daily fines double. If you already have buyers coming through, I'd hate for a lien issue to complicate escrow." Laila did not look at him. I got the notice. "Graham, I'm only trying to preserve property values." His eyes flicked to me. "Colter Ward, welcome back. Try not to let your yard go wild again." The window slid up. The sedan rolled away. For a moment, the street was quiet, except for Barnaby's panting and the sprinkler ticking against concrete. I looked at the limestone wall bordering Laila's front garden. It had been there since before either of us lived on Elm Street. Weathered, uneven, stubborn. Hydrangeas and azaleas grew thick around its base. Moving it 4 feet would tear up her garden, crack her porch supports, and cost more than any normal person kept lying around for neighborhood politics. "They're fining you over the wall?" "They say it crosses the new setback line." "The new line?" "They revised the bylaw after you left." Of course they had. The paper in her hand trembled once before she flattened it against her thigh. "I fought it. I hired someone. I tried, but Graham has a surveyor report. The board follows him, and the fines become a lien if they vote next week." She looked at the for sale sign. "If I sell before the lien attaches, I still have enough equity to start over." Start over. The phrase landed badly. Laila had spent 5 years restoring that house herself. Every railing sanded by hand. Every porch board chosen carefully. Every climbing rose trained along the side fence. She had not bought a property. She had built a home. Laila, don't. Her voice stayed soft, but it cut clean. Don't come back from the ocean and start promising things on the sidewalk. I closed my mouth. She had the right to that. 10 months ago, I had left without giving her a real goodbye. I had taken a captain's contract and disappeared into open water because sitting on her porch had started to feel more dangerous than any storm. Out there, the horizon never asked what I wanted. Out there, I knew how to leave. Here, on Elm Street. Laila looked at me like she had once hoped I might stay and had learned not to need the answer. Barnaby nudged my hand again. I scratched his head one more time. Laila stepped back. I'm glad you made it home safe. Colter. Then she walked toward her house, Barnaby trotting beside her, the for sale sign standing between us like a sentence. I had not been there to stop. I carried my duffel into my own house. The air inside smelled like dust and empty rooms. Mail sat in a neat stack where my sister had left it. A thin layer of grit covered the windowsills. The furniture looked staged, not lived in. I put the duffel down by the door and stood still. On any other return, I would have unpacked, showered, slept 12 hours, and pretended land did not feel too quiet. This time, I walked straight to the old wooden desk in the living room. From the bottom drawer, I pulled out my navigation case. Brass compass. Parallel rulers. A sextant I no longer needed, but never traveled without. And the county plat maps I had bought years ago when I first moved into the neighborhood and wanted to understand the land under my feet. If Graham wanted to fight over lines, he had picked the wrong sailor. I spent the afternoon reading. The current HOA packet was easy to find online. Graham had cited the 2010 county revision, the newest setback map, and a magnetic bearing line that looked official enough to frighten people who did not know what they were looking at. But Elm Street had been platted in 1968. The original development used physical monuments, not just magnetic bearings. A coastal geodesic marker, a drainage easement, and, if the old notes were right, a limestone retaining wall installed before the asphalt road was poured. Laila's wall. At dusk, I walked across the adjoining lawn with a 50-foot metal tape, a flashlight, and a leather ledger. Laila was on her porch, sitting on the top step with a mug of tea between her hands. Barnaby slept beside her feet. Above her, the rusted brass wind chimes clicked once in the breeze, a tired little sound that made my chest ache. I stopped at the wall, not the porch. The metal hook of the tape caught the cornerstone. The reel snapped as I pulled it taut. Laila lifted her head. What are you doing? Reading the line. Graham already read it. No, I said, writing the measurement in my ledger. Graham's surveyor read the wrong line. She did not stand. Please don't do this if you're only doing it because you feel guilty. I locked the tape measure. The sound cracked through the quiet night. I do feel guilty. Her face changed. I looked up at her. But that's not why the wall matters. The porch light showed the exhaustion under her eyes. She looked like she had spent weeks sleeping in fragments. The wall matters because it's original, I said. If the 1968 plat notes are right, the physical monument controls over the newer magnetic bearing. Graham's survey may not be valid. Her fingers tightened around the mug. May not? I need county records. And a licensed surveyor? The old Laila might have leaned forward. This Laila only looked down into her tea. I already paid one surveyor. One Graham liked. Her mouth tightened. I can't afford a second one. You may not have to. Colter. There was warning in my name. I stepped back from the wall. I'm not asking you to trust me yet. That did something to her. A small flicker in her eyes. Not hope. Recognition. Good, she said quietly, because I don't. Then she went inside. The door closed softly behind her. I stood on the lawn until the wind chimes clicked again. A sound like old brass trying to remember music. The next morning, I went to the county records office. Not online, not through scanned summaries. The basement archive, a windowless room that smelled of paper, waxed floors, and 50 years of people believing nothing important would ever need to be found again. The clerk at the desk wore red reading glasses and looked at my navigation case like I had brought a harpoon into a library. "Property dispute?" she asked. "HOA overreach." Worse, her nameplate said Ruth Colter, retired county survey technician, part-time archive clerk, and, as it turned out, the first person in 3 days who smiled like Graham Vale had personally annoyed her at least once. I showed her the HOA notice, the modern survey map, and my copy of the 1968 plat. She studied the documents for 10 silent minutes. Then she pushed her glasses up. Whoever did this used the 2010 magnetic revision without checking the monument notes. And that's what I thought. "You think correctly." She tapped the old plat with one red fingernail. "But don't walk into an HOA meeting with, 'I think.' Walk in with certification. Can you certify it?" "I can certify the archived plat and the monument record. For a boundary opinion, you need an active, licensed surveyor. Do you know one?" She gave me a dry look. "My niece, Maya Colter. She hates bad maps more than I do." By noon, I had certified copies of the original plat, the monument notes, and the county map showing the limestone wall as a boundary feature from the original development. By 3, Maya Colter was standing in Laila's front yard wearing work boots, a sun hat, and the expression of a woman who had already decided someone was wasting her afternoon with nonsense. Laila stood on the porch, arms folded over her cardigan. She looked from Maya to me. "You hired a surveyor?" "I asked for a review." "Colter." Maya looked up from her tripod. "If it helps. I don't do favors. If your wall is wrong, I'll say so." Laila blinked. That helped. For 2 hours, Maya measured, checked the old markers, compared the angle against the archived plat, and muttered things about magnetic drift that made Barnaby tilt his head. I stayed by the mailbox and did not interfere. Laila stayed on the porch and pretended she was not watching every movement. When Maya finished, she took off her hat and looked at the limestone wall. "The wall matches the original monument line within tolerance," she said. "The HOA surveyor used a modern bearing for an original monumented boundary. That's not how this should be enforced." Laila's hand went to the porch railing. She did not speak. Maya clipped her tape measure back to her belt. "I'll write the letter tonight. It won't solve everything, but it should be enough to stop a lien until proper review." Laila looked at me then. For the first time since I came back, something in her face almost moved toward me. Almost. Then her phone buzzed. She checked it. The softness vanished. "What?" I asked. She turned the screen toward me. The buyer, who had been scheduled to view the house that weekend, had withdrawn. Reason: possible title cloud due to pending HOA enforcement. Graham had moved faster than I expected. Laila lowered the phone. "He sent the packet to the listing agent." Her voice was steady, too steady. Maya's jaw tightened. I looked toward the for sale sign, then back at Laila. "Take it off the market?" She gave a small laugh, with no humor in it. "With what money?" The question landed where no map could fix it. This was not just a wall. It was money, debt, fear. A house becoming a trap because a man with a committee title knew how to drain someone slowly. "I'm not selling because I want to leave," she said. "I'm selling because the fines are already eating the repair fund. The porch still needs work. The back gutter failed in April. The appraisal won't hold if they keep sending notices." There it was. The second lock on the door. Not just legal pressure, financial pressure. I had arrived home thinking I could solve a line on a map. Laila had been drowning in a paper tide for weeks. Maya looked between us. "I'll have my letter by morning," she said.
"But you need an attorney to demand suspension of enforcement."
"I have one," Laila said.
"Then send everything tonight."
Laila nodded. Maya packed her equipment and left. The 3 of us did not stand there. Only Laila, Barnaby, and me. The wind shifted. The brass chimes above the porch gave one rough, hollow note. I didn't know it was this bad. I said, "You weren't here." No anger, just fact. It hurt more because she did not aim it like a weapon. I know. She looked at the for sale sign. Then she walked down the porch steps, crossed the lawn, and grabbed the metal post with both hands. For 1 second, I thought she would pull it out. Instead, her grip failed. Not physically. Something inside her simply ran out. Her hands dropped. "I hate that sign," she whispered. I walked over, but I stopped 2 feet away. "May I?" She looked at me, then at the sign, then she nodded once. I pulled it out of the ground. The post resisted. Wet soil clung to the metal. Then it came free with a rough tearing sound. Laila covered her mouth with one hand. I laid the sign flat beside the porch. Not triumphant, not destroyed. "Just remove. For now," I said. Her eyes shone, but she did not cry. "For now," she repeated. The next week became a kind of war fought in paper, soil, and silence. Laila's attorney, Denise Hartman, sent a demand letter asking the HOA to suspend enforcement pending independent boundary review. Graham refused. Maya sent her surveyor letter. Graham challenged it. Ruth certified the original county plat and monument notes. Graham called the records historical, but not controlling. The title company flagged the property. Laila's realtor paused the listing. The board meeting was moved up, then moved again. Every time Graham felt the ground shift, he tried to change the room. I recognized that tactic from storms. When the sea does not give you control, some men start shouting at the compass. On Thursday afternoon, I found Laila in the garden trying to clear the azaleas from the base of the wall. She wore canvas gloves and held a pair of rusted shears that stuck every time she squeezed them. I went to my garage, brought back my oiled carbon steel shears, and held them out. She looked at the tool, then at me. "You oil garden shears?" "I oil anything that can save a person's hands." For a second, her mouth almost remembered how to smile. She took them. We worked side by side, without talking. The blades clipped through branches. Barnaby slept in the shade. The wind chimes clicked over the porch. That sound had changed for me. The first day back, it sounded like a house I had lost. Now it sounded like a question. "Will you stay long enough to fix what you can?" After 40 minutes, Laila said. I waited. The words came so quietly, I almost missed them. I stopped clipping. She kept looking at the wall. "When you left," she said, "I told myself it was fine. You were never mine to keep. You were a man with a duffel bag and maps of places I couldn't pronounce." I did not move. She cut one branch, then another. But every time the wind chimes moved, I looked toward your driveway before I could stop myself. The shears lowered. She finally looked at me. I waited. Colter. I hated myself for it some days. But I waited, and then the letters started coming. And the fines. And Graham. And I thought maybe that was the lesson. That waiting for people only gives them time to prove they're gone. The garden went still around us. I wanted to step closer. I did not. She deserved space more than my regret. "I don't have a defense," I said. "Good." "I have an apology." Her eyes held mine. "I'm listening." I left because I was scared that if I stayed, this would become the only place I wanted to be. The truth felt strange, spoken in daylight. No storm, no dramatic music, just dirt on my jeans and the woman I had hurt standing in her garden. I thought wanting one place meant losing the whole horizon. I said, but out there, every horizon looked the same after a while. I kept checking the weather here. I kept thinking about your porch, your dog, those terrible wind chimes. They are not terrible. They sound like spoons falling downstairs. They have character. They have rust. Her mouth moved, almost a smile. Then it faded. What changes now? I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my phone. I opened the email I had sent the night before. Contract declined. Seattle freight route. 2-year command. No counteroffer requested. Laila read. Her face did not change quickly. She had learned not to trust quick changes. Then I opened the second email. Offer accepted. Maritime Academy, navigation instructor. Start date, August. Land-based, permanent. Her gloved hand rose to her throat. I'm not asking you to believe a promise, I said. I'm showing you the paper. The wind chimes moved. One uneven note, then another. Laila looked from the phone to the wall, then to me. Good, she said. Only one word, but her voice no longer sounded like a locked door. The community center was full the night of the hearing. Not packed, but close enough to show that Graham had spent the week feeding the neighborhood a story about property values. Dangerous precedents, and one woman refusing to follow rules everyone else obeyed. Laila wore a navy cardigan over a white blouse and carried a slim folder. I carried nothing visible except the certified plat packet. Denise, her attorney, sat in the front row. Maya Colter stood near the side wall with her survey notes. Ruth Colter sat behind her red reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck, looking delighted to be old enough not to fear anyone's committee voice. Elaine Morrow, one of the board members, sat beside Graham at the folding table. She had always been quiet in meetings, the kind of person who nodded along to keep the peace. Tonight, she looked at the packet in front of her instead of Graham. That mattered. Graham called the meeting to order. He smiled at the room. Tonight we are here to discuss enforcement of a retaining wall setback violation at the Martin property. This is not personal. This is about standards. Laila's fingers tightened once around her folder. Then she opened it. Denise rose first. My client requests that enforcement be suspended pending county verification of the original monument boundary. Graham leaned back. The HOA has a valid survey. Maya stepped forward. With respect, no. You have a survey using a modern magnetic bearing against a monumented 1968 plat. That is not a valid basis for enforcement. Graham's smile thinned. And you are? Maya Colter, licensed boundary surveyor. Ruth lifted one hand from the second row, and I certified the county archive copy she used. A low murmur passed through the room. Graham tapped his pen. Even if there is some technical disagreement, the board has discretion. No, Elaine said. Everyone looked at her, even Graham. Elaine's voice shook at first, then steadied. Not if the title company has been notified. Not if there is a conflicting certified record. Not if we continue enforcement after receiving counsel's warning. Graham's face reddened. Elaine, we discussed property values. She said, we did not discuss creating liability. That was the moment the room changed. Not because of me, because someone inside Graham's own wall had opened a gate. Denise handed out the packets. I stood only when she nodded. My name is Colter Ward, I said. I own the property 2 lots west of Ms. Martin's. I'm a licensed sailing captain and incoming navigation instructor at the Maritime Academy. I read bearings for a living. I'm not here as counsel. I'm here to explain the map. Graham looked like he wanted to object to my existence. He did not. I laid the old plat beside the modern survey. I explained true north, magnetic drift, physical monuments, the limestone wall, the original drainage easement. The error was not complicated once someone stopped trying to make it useful. Then Maya explained the professional verification. Then Ruth explained the certified archive. Then Denise explained the legal risk. By the time Graham tried to speak again, the room was no longer his. A neighbor in the back asked why the HOA had sent notice to the title company before the hearing. Another asked who authorized daily fines before boundary verification. Another asked whether other properties had old monument lines that might be affected. Property values had become a boomerang. Graham looked at the microphone, recording the minutes. His voice came out stiff. The board will suspend enforcement pending county review. Denise stood. And all fines? Graham's jaw worked. Suspended, Elaine corrected him. Frozen, with no lien activity, until review is complete. He glared at her. She did not look away. The vote passed. Not a full victory, a real one. Outside the community center, Laila stopped under the yellow parking lot light and let out a breath that seemed to empty weeks from her body. The wind moved through the trees. No chimes here. Still, I heard them in my head. You did it, I said. She looked at me. No, we paused it. A small smile touched her mouth. Process. Captain. I laughed quietly. 8 weeks later, the county issued its final verification. The limestone wall was recognized as the original boundary monument. The HOA withdrew the violation. The fines were canceled. The title cloud was removed. The for sale sign stayed in Laila's garage. Face turned toward the wall. Graham resigned as HOA president after Elaine requested an independent review of enforcement practices. He called it retirement from volunteer service. Ruth called it finally learning gravity. Elaine became interim president and passed a rule requiring independent verification before any property enforcement notice could be sent to a title company. Maya got 3 more calls from neighbors who suddenly wanted their fences checked. Laila kept her house. The porch got repaired in September. The gutter got replaced before the first heavy rain. I started teaching navigation at the academy and came home every evening to the same street. The same oaks, the same stubborn wall. Some days, staying felt easy. Some days, the old restlessness moved under my skin like tidewater. On those days, I fixed something. A porch screw, a gate latch, a loose board, not because I could repair my way into forgiveness, because staying was not a word. It was maintenance. One evening in late October, I came home to find Laila in my driveway with Barnaby and a paper bag from the bakery. Your porch light is out, she said. I noticed you walked past it 3 nights in a row. I was observing failure patterns. You were ignoring it. I took the bag. What's this? Apple turnovers. Bribe? Encouragement. We changed the bulb together. She held the ladder. Barnaby supervised poorly. When the light came on, her face lifted in the glow. The rusted chimes across the lawn answered the wind. I climbed down. Laila looked toward her porch. I used to think those chimes sounded lonely, she said. They still sound like spoons. She nudged my arm. I mean it. I followed her gaze. They sounded lonely because I was listening from inside an empty house, she said. Now they sound like somebody is home. I did not trust myself with a clever answer, so I gave her the only one that mattered. I'm home. A year after I came back, the azaleas had grown thick enough to hide most of the limestone wall from the street. The wall was still there, exactly where it had always been. Laila's porch was full of neighbors for the first fall potluck under Elaine's kinder HOA. Ruth sat in the best chair, like royalty. Maya argued with a retired engineer about fence angles. Barnaby slept under the food table and pretended he was innocent every time a roll disappeared. I stood near the porch steps, tightening a loose screw on the rusted brass wind chimes. Laila came out carrying 2 mugs of tea. She handed me one, then looked at the chimes. You're not replacing them? Never. They're terrible, remember? They have character. Her smile warmed slowly. Then she turned toward the yard. The neighbors were talking, laughing, eating from mismatched plates. The house no longer looked besieged. It looked lived in. Laila stepped to the top of the porch stairs and tapped her mug with a spoon. The hollow ring made the whole porch turn quiet. I want to say something, she said. Her voice was steady. This house stayed mine because people finally stopped treating rules like weapons and started treating neighbors like people. Ruth, Maya, Elaine, Denise, thank you. Then she looked back at me, and Colter. The porch went very still in my chest. Laila held my gaze. He came back after nearly a year away. I was walking Barnaby, pretending I didn't see him, pretending I hadn't waited. But I had. Her smile trembled, just a little. Then he stayed. Not in one grand speech. In maps, meetings, porch screws, burned-out bulbs, and every ordinary day after the hard one, she came down one step and held out her hand. Not hidden, not uncertain. I took it. The wind moved through the rusted brass chimes above us. They rang unevenly, rough, familiar, perfect, and for the first time in my life, the sound did not make me think of leaving. It made me think of all the things worth staying to hear again. The end. Closing thoughts. Core lesson: real love is not proven by one dramatic rescue. It is proven by the steady choice to stay, repair, document the truth, and protect the life two people are building day by day. Green flag. Healthy love does not pressure someone to trust quickly after they have been hurt. It respects proof, patience, and boundaries. Then lets commitment become visible through consistent action. Like plus subscribe. Please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like this.